Hey everybody, Michael Swaim here, and I'm doing it. I'm calling you to action. I am sincerely asking that if you're able, you'll check us out over at patreon.com/smallbeans, where if you upgrade to being a $5 a month or more patron, you get access to twice as many pods like Star Trek The Next Futurama, Spielboys, Director Piece Theater, and One-Upsmanship, and even more great stuff. So hey, come on in, the water's beans. Patreon.com/smallbeans. Jeff presents a Jeff show, a Jeff joint by Jeff. See, I told you I had an intro. I had a real good intro all queued up, and you were worried.
I was worried, and I should not have been.
That's right. That's Abe Epperson. I'm Michael Swaim. This is Frame Rate, the show where we rate frames. Hey, that rhymes with Michael Swaim. And the reason I started with a whole scat of Jeffs is that's our Patreon producer, Jeff. Thank you, who supported us at the Pick the Flick level and brought us today's episode. Today's episode where we're covering Bowling for Columbine. And we thought, who better to do that than someone you just immediately think of when you think Columbine, Katy Stoll.
Oh, hello. What an intro. I would also like to thank Jeff, everybody.
Jeff.
Be like Jeff, everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
Jeff, and executive produced this episode on Bowling for Columbine.
Mm-hmm.
You can get us to watch almost any movie that way. We watched The Happy Poet, so you can too. Don't make us watch that, though. Not that again. God, not that.
We have the right of refusal if it's like, the movie you made when you're in high school.
That's right. But no, you all know Katy Stoll probably from some more news, even more news. Best year ever? Worst year ever? I always forget because you guys are also ironic, and I'm like, it could be.
Yeah, it could have been.
You
wasn't.
could say it ironically or not, but
I would say that your audience probably knows me more for Cracked.
That's true.
I know and love you from Life and your dog Benny and all kinds of stuff. So let's dive in. We usually start by asking the guests like why they picked the movie, but of course this time you didn't. So I'll just ask, what's your history with the film, Katy? Had you seen this before? How many times?
I've only seen it once before.
It's a one-time type movie.
It's a one-time type movie.
Man, if you said 8-9 times, that would have been hilarious.
I watch it
every
year.
I want to say that I saw it in high school. Came out 2002.
Yeah.
Theaters?
That's about right.
Theaters.
That's theater release in May of 2002.
Say that I saw it then. If not then, in first year of college or something like that. Yeah, just the one time.
Haven't watched since then, right? Yeah. Same here.
Same.
I watched ditto. Okay, all three of us. So we're all going in with basically the same situation, which is, I know I agree politically with the thrust of this. When I was a kid, it totally, or at least don't want to speak for all of you, but when I was a kid, it suckered me in, or it suckered, I don't know, this is what I want to get into. But
Did you get all riled up?
I got all riled up. I agreed with all the points. I cried about the tragedy of humanity. I agree, I got angry about what needed to happen. And I was wondering last night watching it, am I going to feel the same? Or is it because I just want to get right at it. Michael Moore is also largely considered, even by progressive liberals, like a hack at this point, right? Is that fair to say? Or hacky?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think
not
that
a serious person.
It's not. No, well, I would say that people consider him, are frustrated with him sometimes, would consider him a bit of a propagandist or somebody that will conveniently present information to suit the narrative, might be selective about what facts they use. And that's I guess what I think a lot of people think about him. That's not to say that I don't agree with a lot of things that he's talking about. I also I don't some people seem to forget this, but I sure don't. He was the only one that was saying pre-2016 that Donald Trump would win. And
one of the few. And
one of the few.
I mean, Fahrenheit 9/11 really does a good case for how 9/11 was not an inside job, but they capitalized on it immediately to be like, let's intentionally lie about what it's about to do this other unrelated thing that we wanted to do anyway. And that is a very powerful truth that people need to be exposed to.
It's
and I
true.
think the same holds true for Bowling for Columbine, which in a nutshell, I think this is my thing, is I actually think as an active documentary, it kind of meanders sometimes where I'm like, what's your point with that segment? But the general thrust is that if you control for all other factors, why we have so many gun deaths in this country is just the ease of sheer access to guns, is his argument. Like, it's not that we're especially more violent or less violent or independent or not independent or blood on our hands or whatever. It's just we need gun control, period. You're always going to have shootings because it's just too easy to get them.
So many thoughts.
And our
please,
media machine.
That's why you're here.
Our media machine is one
selling
that
them
scares.
through fear.
Yeah.
That's the other
It's
thing.
a system, which is honestly a great point that is still relevant.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of awful that it's like in 2002, it was kind of a revelation for if you were in high school and you had started critical thinking as a part of the process of becoming a human, that nothing has been done. Like it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel, at least. I don't know the statistics.
What year did you say?
on Guthrie.
2002.
2002 is
so
for Columbine.
Then I'll do you one better. Or like, I gotta shout out. There's this thing my brother turned me on to on the BBC, 4-part, 4-hour series called The Century of the Self. I just looked it up. Also 2002 by this documentarian Curtis, and it traces this exact same thing, the fear economy, but in this minute way from specifically like Sigmund Freud's little brother did this thing and invented modern marketing and the idea of fear-based marketing, and it virally spread, and it's like fucked up the entire century is the argument of this documentary. And it really mirrors, like, if you like Bowling for Columbine, it's almost a more credible British, like, straight-laced version of some of the same theories. But yeah, Katy, so you said you had so many thoughts, so please take us in whatever direction your brain desires.
But then you were saying stuff, and I have responses to that as well. As
that's right.
You guys just keep lighting me up here. Okay, let's see if I can remember everything I just thought. In terms of that, it's shocking and sobering to see how little the conversation has changed, how relevant everything that was discussed is now. And it's watching it now, I felt an extra level of sadness because Columbine, this is still a new reality that we were facing. This is a new thing that we're unpacking. And there was so much more care given to the individual victims. Not care, but I'm saying we were more horrified by it. There are so many dead bodies of children in the years since then. And there's a desensitization that's happened. We're all outraged by it, but we move fast.
Yeah, the movie totally takes for granted that this is a crazy thing that's not going to happen all the time.
Yes, it
and
does.
that you're flabbergasted by it because it's so crazy. And you're like, man,
and
you
seeing
ain't
how
seen nothing
shocked
yet,
it
dude.
is.
Yeah.
I know. And I remember being there, being this age and seeing this thing that was changing. But I was on my way out of high school as this cultural shift happened. So I don't remember being afraid for my life in high school. But watching the kids directly younger than me having that experience. So there's that. Just something that struck me while watching last night. But Michael Moore, I want to say something about Michael Moore, which is, I think he's a taken with a grain of salt. I think that he does a lot of good, but there's a lot of what he puts out that is off-putting and manipulative. Okay, I'll say that. Even in this, if you're going through it, which I'm sure we will, there are moments where you're like, okay, well, that's heavy-handed, XYZ. The thing I like about
like the
Michael,
Kmart.
Yes, yes, that felt manipulative to me.
He verges on the PETA-esque, right? It's where it's like you're not wrong, but you're obnoxious at this point.
And you're roping in these kids. these kids that have just gone through a tragedy never would have thought
Using them
I'm
as a
gonna
prop
using
for
them as
your
a prop.
movie. Right.
I went cold at that. But what Michael Moore does that I appreciate, and I appreciate more since moving to the mountains, and I was kind of talking about this before we started recording, he humanizes people. He gets in there, and there is a little bit of mockery in it, to be fair, but he does seem to tend to, same thing with saying Donald Trump is going to win. He sees things from a way that a lot of people don't, or he can humanize people that disagree with us a lot. Does that make sense?
I think he does this absolutely. I think the tactic he uses is he appeals to everyone. Everything is an appeal, and therefore there's a he humanizes people, because even if they're completely diametrically opposed to his opinion and hate him and intentionally hostile, he's the kind of person who's just like, but don't you want this to be better, right? Like, you're on my side.
He grew up in Flint, Michigan. He's from there. He has a firsthand experience with people that are not from liberal cities that have been disenfranchised, that are products of a broken system. And he's able to talk to them and, come at it from that perspective.
Right. He's a card-carrying NRA member.
Right. And when I saw some of those interviews and the conversations he was having towards the beginning of the film, they echo conversations that I have with people up here all the time. This idea of personal safety, of, it's for a lot of people, it's less about your neighbor, although sure, there's that, protect myself from whatever possible threat, from wildlife, from an intruder. But more than that, it is about the idea that we, the people, need to be able to fight back with the government if we ever need to protect our personal liberty. That is the through line for a lot of people.
Which is so funny, because it's like they already have it all. They took it all, like a piece at a time, so long ago. Your ass is owned by 5 different corporations, bro.
Yes.
Yeah, but
and
anyway.
but the people that are taking your freedom are not the people that you think. Also, do you really think that you can withstand the might of the U.S. military?
Well, and it does have a couple Borat-esque moments where you're like, great, he got him, zing, that are delightful. I think one of them is the guy going, and like Abe said, he would be a good deep canvasser, which is something my partner Jen does, which is like, techniques required to actually change someone's mind on a voting issue, right? Which is very difficult to do. And I think he'd be good at that, because he only asks questions. He's gentle. He's appealing to your humanity. Most people like to think they have humanity, so they'll allow themselves to be appealed to on that. Like, well, I'm not an asshole. That's why racist people don't want to be called racist. And he asks this guy, who's like, you got to be able to overthrow the government. Oh, it's Terry, the brother of the Oklahoma City bomber. And he's like, well, what about, a nuclear weapon? Can I have that? Yep. And he goes, wow, that should be restricted. Oh, so you do believe in government restriction on some weapons? Yeah. Well, there's a lot of wackos out there.
It's really funny. I recorded
money
that
shot.
And sent it to one of my very pro-gun
people
up here, and he was like, I'll take a nuke.
I'll take a nuke. I'll have a nuke.
I'll take a nuke.
I'll take a nuke was his response.
I also love, and that's just a matter of priorities and, like what your interests are and, politically, but like there's something so telling also in that conversation where it's not just that gotcha moment, which, this is definitely gotcha journalism at its best, I'd say.
He's trying to dunk, and when he succeeds, it's funny.
It works.
There's moments,
There's like a kind of paraphrase that same guy says, like, the pen is mightier than the sword, but carry a sword if like the pen fails. And that's the mentality.
Repeatedly
right?
Goes, look, I don't want to blow anyone up here, but I'm building a bomb. It's basically all his statements.
And I think Michael Moore is so right to go toward the direction of, okay, so you have installed in your brain a heavy amount of fear. And then he has like the Canada, section where it's just like, we leave our doors open all the time and I don't care. And it's like, you found people in your house stealing your stuff, like, and you still don't lock your doors? Yeah, no, I don't care.
Because they're acculturated to it in a
But
different
also,
way.
I think that might be misrepresenting things as well.
Agreed.
I'm not positive. I
Probably.
think that's misrepresenting. Also, just
Canada's gone populist as well. You know, they have their Trump-esque problem.
and maybe that is a shift that's happened in the time since. But I think
it's
just
not.
Even looking around, I'm like, I don't think that that's accurately representing that much.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
just speaking of another moment of, what are you doing, man? Stop opening people's doors.
Oh, right,
Going
right.
into people's houses.
By some of the stuff he does. Well, that's why.
Yeah.
I mean, the very first thing I was
Pretty
like,
sweaty.
oh, here we go. The sweatiness is where it gets me. Like, because this won the Academy Award as well. Keep that all in mind as we go into it. I thought it was fascinating that in the beginning he does that whole bit with the bank that gives away free guns.
Yes.
And it's almost a Shaggy Dog joke. It's like setup, and you know what the punchline's going to be. And then he finally does the punchline they hard cut out with punk music, which is, so do you think it's kind of dangerous to give me a gun in a bank? Bow, 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 bow. And I'm like, well, yeah, you had to hard cut out, because the very next moment would be someone explaining to you that all the bullets are secured and all the guns are empty and
Right.
it is safe. That's
Also,
the thing. So like,
apparently that's not even true, because in order to do it, you need to have had an account for a certain amount of time
and a background check and whatnot.
$5,000 or something in the bank account.
Yeah, so he's willing to cut corners that I think a lot of people go, well, you don't want to do that because that gives the other team, so to speak, chance to invalidate your claim.
And that to me is unfortunate. And I hope I run a news program. I mean, no, what we do is very different, obviously, but I find it very, very, very important to make sure that you're clear on your information, because it doesn't change the fact that you shouldn't be selling it's ridiculous that you get a gun with your bank account.
Right.
Any amount of restrictions, like the fact that
that's what I'm saying. The point stands. You didn't have to gussy it
you didn't
up.
have to do that, and that invalidates it to a degree. You are not being honest, and you don't need to lie to make your point here.
Yeah, the lying, the manipulation and the propaganda, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about, but like, what you guys are saying, like, Michael Moore relies really heavily on the way things look. There's no space for nuance. He's basically a blunt object, like Borat. Like, it's about making the nuance feel ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you gives no ground to the other side. And obviously we have some loaded phraseology, and stuff of like, the other side might say, that's not everyone. There's just a few bad apples, or you're highlighting extreme cases. His job, you can tell he is going for this, is to make you feel frustrated at making that very claim. Everyone is angry all the time on both sides, and I feel like one of the reasons that he's not helping this situation is that he's not wanting to present any side with nuance. He just wants to say, look, this is insane. Can we not agree that this is insane? Which is honestly, like, to me, that's kind of the point of satire, right? If we go back to Jonathan Swift, and like eating babies.
He does
because
this every movie. This is the first time it's worked.
It's like, it really comes down to like being a blunt object because you get angry at it, right? So I think he is very effective, and I don't love the gotcha journalism. I don't love the lack of nuance and, just relying heavily on like the way things look.
He creates a Rick and Morty-esque fan base effect where you're like, people who are hardcore Michael Moore fans are annoying to be around. I guess that's my main gripe.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, yeah,
because
exactly. That's why.
Honestly, these days, except for fans of our shows, hardcore, I think that we need to be able to be fans of people and respect their work and honest about shortcomings, because otherwise this is all part of the retweet culture, the like blind following, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because that's how the wrong things take hold, and it polarizes us even more. I think it's very important.
Right. And I will say, I feel like a lot of the stuff that is his major thrust, right? It's that thing where you're like, well, if you are only going to say one thing over and over, I agree with the thing you're saying generally. Like the fear-based economy is real, and but it just becomes odd. Like this one wants to focus on the school shooting specifically, and it ends up a lot of it becoming anti the way Fox News works basically in the 24-hour news cycle, which I agree with and which is interesting, but the connection that he tries to tie directly to the Columbine shooting is just not there. So that's why it's, as we just keep going around saying he's a mixed bag. But like, let's talk about, I guess, things that stood out to us along those lines. I will say, even though, again, I don't think it has much to do with Columbine specifically, but I love that he kept talking intersectionally about the thing that I really, think about a lot, which is that America just wants slavery without the guilt. And we've just, ever since slavery made us the richest country in the world, we're trying to redo slavery in some way. And he does that chunk about the woman working 70 hours a week at the mall while her 6-year-old's at school shooting another 6-year-old because he's completely unsupervised. And the places at the mall get fucking tax breaks to work her like a slave. And she still doesn't make enough to make rent. And he goes and talks, but then he talks to Dick Clark, and you're like, you didn't need to talk to Dick Clark.
No,
he
you
always
didn't.
goes one step too far. Right?
It's like obviously Dick Clark, because it was Dick. Dick Clark's name was on the bill,
fudgery or whatever.
Fudgery, whatever that this woman worked.
Dick Clark's
but like
fudge.
he knew that was just going to be a sensational moment for the documentary that can get a headline.
That's right.
Also, we can talk about the Charlton Heston moment too, but that it's been pretty verified that he fudged that, like kind of faked it. I mean, he didn't fake it, but there's like the shot as he's calling out down the stairs to him as Charlton Heston walks away and he ignores it.
Yeah.
It's obviously faked because from the one POV, you could see over his shoulder, and from the reverse, there's no camera behind. Whatever. He got his own coverage at a different time, but it's dishonest. I went on a little digression and forgot my original point.
No, well, also, I mean, it's and maybe it's partly we've gotten there because of people like Michael Moore. I did see some of the through line to things that are purely entertainment with some political satire on the side, like Borat. Like it was interesting. Borat 2, right? The big finale was the Rudy Giuliani seeming to fondle himself scene, and it came with a baked in expectation of like, who's he gonna get this time, who's he gonna nail this time. And it is funny to watch every genre, including political satire documentaries, evolve. Like this one seems quaint now. Him talking to Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston basically just comes off as a befuddled old man who barely understands what's going on. And you're like, that was not
partially true.
That was not a gotcha, dude.
He was tricked.
You just bothered this old man.
Yeah.
I agree. This old man sucks ass. But that scene wasn't triumphant. It was stupid.
Yes.
It was kind of stupid because it also doesn't do anything. It shows the hypocrisy, which he's already kind of done on a societal level. So it's
you
like,
already
why...
nailed it. You over nailed it.
Yeah.
Plus, I know that it was that one is talked about a lot because Charlton Heston, it was known at the time that he was going through Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So he is a befuddled old man, and that's kind of fucked.
That. Yeah.
And it's interesting. That brings up the notion that I think is at the heart of like why we like Michael Moore and why we dislike Michael Moore, is that at the end of the day, you kind of have to just have an opinion on Charlton Heston, where it's like,
and gun violence. Like you probably already have your opinion.
Oh, that don't do that to the Alzheimer's old man. Or is your opinion, yeah, but
he deserves it. Fuck him because he does blah blah
blah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people draw the line. I think that's like some people want to say that, some people don't.
If you have Alzheimer's, you shouldn't be making decisions like whether a national lobbying group should show up in the wake of a school shooting or not.
Well,
that shouldn't be your decision.
Maybe, perhaps other people were helping him make those decisions.
Right. Or putting him on a dolly and wheeling him onto the stage.
Which we know now people do all the time. Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, R.I.P. Sort of.
She's sort of, but not yet. Yeah.
Too soon. I have remembered some thoughts and have other ones. Michael, to your point, I also very much appreciate the things that Michael Moore highlights in this film, it is meandering. We go on these digressions, which are natural offshoots of when you're talking about this problem. Yes, the media landscape. Yes, absolutely. We show Black people on TV all the time.
Talks about how we're scared of the
where
Africanized
it's-
bee, and that's latently racist. And you're like, that's interesting, but what are you talking
But
about?
what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? But I think that that's a knockout of the park. I think that's like that's straight up. Like if that was a stand-up bit, that's a fucking.
Oh, that's
awesome
true. Where you're
stand-up
like,
bit.
oh, the European bee's more timid, is it, newsman?
Yeah.
Oh, is
I
it?
see
Oh,
what
no,
you're
it's
doing.
funny.
because it like so perfectly says what America like. Oh, it's an immigrant bee.
Oh, that's
Uh-oh.
too angry. Oh, the bee's too angry now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, but they're all good observations. But yes, it feels a little bit meandering. And ultimately, what this movie is about is why does America have so much more gun violence than other countries? And it doesn't quite answer that question. Not really. It explores
It
all
says
these
it
different
has something
things.
to do with fear economy, but it
Something to
doesn't
do with
say
fear
anything
economy.
definitive.
It said something
And our love of guns.
about our love of guns. There, some people, I guess it didn't go that much into gun laws, which is smart because that's a whole tapestry that's really hard to unpack. And I have thoughts. I don't know. So this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I don't know if other people will go on this journey with me.
Mhm.
If everyone's there.
We will, Katy.
I just think it's impossible to answer this with one. This question can't be answered with one answer. There's a bunch of them. Yes, we have so many fucking guns here. Yes, it is deeply ingrained in American culture, this idea of personal liberty. But a lot of the stuff that we are seeing, especially in the years since this, is people are struggling. It's late stage capitalism. People are fucking sad. People don't have resources. People don't have access to healthcare. People don't have opportunities. We have been oppressing communities for generations. It's not hard to see how our country has become increasingly more hostile across the board. And add to that the fact that, yeah, we have guns. Other countries have other sorts of social safety nets. Other countries have different cultural conversations around guns and different expectations of. There's so many different answers. But to me, we are a confluence of a whole bunch of fucking bad elements. You know what I'm saying? But capitalism to me is a big part of it. I think that as people get more desperate, our violence is only going to, across the board, is only going to get worse. Okay, off of my pedestal.
No, it's great. That mimics a lot, I think, of a lot of people out there. I think that's kind of what the last 20 years after the aftermath of this movie is kind of wrought. We're kind of like, we haven't seen that change. So why are we still,
Yeah.
why are we still kind of churning our wheels?
No, he talks about how the crime rate is actually relatively lower than it's ever been, and yet our fear of crime is at an all-time high. That's still true, even more extremely than it was then. The trend continues and has not
Right.
reversed.
And that's particularly nefarious and makes it confusing. And that's why this issue becomes, I think, very people contradict each other and get very heated because what you just said, murder rate down 20%, news coverage of murders up 600% in 2002. That narrative can be spinned that at that point in history, buying guns was actually creating a safer place. When we know that that's not necessarily true. I
mean, boy, I've gotten into it so many times over the past year here, talking to people about it. And I haven't heard somebody say this, but I've heard people suggest that it could be a potential that there's some false flags going on with some of these mass shootings. think about it, then you'll have more gun legislation. Where's
Right.
the more gun? And we all know we've got 3D fucking printers. We have states' rights. California can do whatever, go to town on gun restrictions, but you can go and get it in Arizona. You can go do this. You can go do that. It's impossible. There's so many loopholes. So actually, try again. If there was actually a false flag going on, who do you think benefits the most from a mass shooting? Tell you right now, it's the gun manufacturers. It's the
That's a
NRA.
great question to ask.
Well, that's another thing he points to is that, and again, it's sort of an anecdotal connection more than a statistical one where you can back up. So you'd rather see something stronger, but I don't think he's wrong about Lockheed Martin being sort of the poster boy of, on a grander scale, this is what we do, right? We're a aggressor nation in a real way and an oppressor nation in a real way, and that translates through, like, it's hard to be involved in wars abroad and then be lousy with guns and also say but nobody use them.
Right.
And he has that scene with the Lockheed Martin guy and talking about how, and as we've just seen, right, with the Israeli invasion of Gaza, the stock immediately went up, or of places like Lockheed Martin. And I think Lockheed Martin stock did indeed go up. And that always makes me sick, right? Because I don't really understand. People are like, well, it's going to go up because it just reflects the reality that when in a war, there's weapons sold. And I'm like, all right, you shouldn't make money off that. Or it's weird to me that it's legal to make money off that. That incentivizes that we murder each other.
Well,
I thought the whole point of civilization was to disincentivize murdering each other.
Well, yet again, I'll just bring it back to the capitalism thing. Because when I say it, this is on all levels it is. There's the effect of people being desperate and their lives are not going well under our system. But there's also that we benefit. Lots of people make money off of their fear. We always want to make money. And people, and it goes hand in hand with the media. It's afraid, fear. You're not safe. Go and buy this fucking gun. Now you can be safe. Now you can sleep at night with your loaded gun on your fucking pillow.
And it's connected to advertising as well, in the sense that it started with, first it started with, I want to sell you a Coca-Cola. It's made of sugar. Here it is. You drink it. And then it went to, if you don't drink this Coca-Cola, you're not part of the Coca-Cola movement. Your identity is weird. And that fear sold more units. And based on that simple, stupid trick, we've ruined the entire society. We're like, let's do that, but with everything. Let's make people change their thoughts and opinions based on fear, and live based on fear, and buy and sell based on fear, and everything will just be based on fear. And it's still true, and he's not wrong about it. So if nothing else, like, I don't know. Yeah, he's a blunt object, but he's hacking at a thing that's real. So that's good.
And he actually, like, we all were like, the Kmart thing is super sweaty, because what he does is he takes two victims who survived Columbine, and he brought them to the Kmart that the bullets were purchased from, and he was like, what do you have to say about this? Like, he didn't seem to have a plan, but they kind of, they jazzed it, and he was like, you know what, we should just buy out all the bullets. And then he was like, all right, let's go to the corporate Kmart and see what can be done. At the end of the day, because Kmart, Michael Moore comes for Moore comes for your money. That's kind of the beauty of him. And I'm going to make you not, and I'm willing to steep to the lowest of the lows to make you feel to feel that. Yeah. And again, so PETA, if the system is broken, and what do these people fear? Looking bad. So he actually won. He got Kmart to be like, in 90 days, we're no longer selling bullets.
He did. I would be curious to follow up to make sure certain things that lasted, or what bullets. But this is the thing. And at the time, and I celebrate that for what it's worth, that it is a win. I do not like how he went about it. Some of that is my own knowledge of victims and that I have learned in the years and years since this movie came out. And my personal philosophy on right and wrong, but also there's something a frustration that I felt a lot over the last few years. A victory like that, well, the store next door is just selling them instead for the same amount. It's yes,
Yeah,
but there is sometimes, and that is a
really?
victory, and I think it's important. I think that a lot of times we'll see some headline, Biden cancels student debt, and we're like, yay, we did it. And then you open it up and you're like, well, actually it was just this. Also, it's going to get struck down in Supreme Court. Also, has he ever mentioned the fact that this is an ongoing problem? That
he fell asleep while he was signing it, and it didn't get put into law in time.
But we have so much on our plates that we're worried about, just with our own lives, let alone all the horrors we see all the time in the news, that something like that switches a brain. Like, great, that's one check off the list. You know what I mean? Not that did it, but in general, that's a big moment of celebration, a positive thing in this movie. Like, we can do it. It's like, I also know that that's so superficial in the scope of things. And at the same time, you manipulated 2 kids to do it. But yes, also at the time, I agree with the other things that have been said about it as well. So
true. I want to kind of backpedal a little bit and go to something that Michael said.
Oh, thank
which
you.
I think it bears kind of repeating or introspection, which is, you know, the idea of this kind of cultural like issue that we have in America more than most countries, but it's not, you know, it's shared by many, about this sensationalism. And I want to point out and hear your thoughts on the cops segment. I laughed out loud at this one because I love that the producer not once but twice is like, yeah, baby, if you like, we need to see someone with their shirt off. Like, that's the whole point. Like, he has learned these hard and fast rules of how to make money.
He's a night
how
crawler.
To become sensational. Yeah, he's a night crawler. And it's just so funny to me that it's just like, he's just a simple little termite biting the wood in front of him. He's not thinking about these things. And he is in a way despicable, but also like,
innocent.
He's just like, I don't know, man. It's not my job
because he agrees.
Solve America.
Well, Michael Moore is like, don't you think it's racist? And he goes, I didn't think it was. Maybe it is, though.
Maybe.
Or like, I'm just doing what I'm doing.
Going out of his way during that. He's like, hey, I'm one of the good guys. I'm a liberal.
Right.
Hey.
No, he's a dipshit.
He's a dipshit.
But
I'm
it was still a funny segment.
Yeah.
That was when I started writing on my notes. Like, are you just riffing at this point? Or what is this? Did you have an idea for the sketch bit and you wanted to do it? But I do think he said something that remains so pulsatingly true to this day. In fact, I've seen a lot of the ethos of this movie in viral tweets since. For example, the thing where it counts down, do you know how many gun deaths there are in Japan, in Sweden, and Canada, and Australia, and America? And like, I've seen that as a tweet. And it is shocking if you don't know that information, right? That we're like thousands and thousands of times anyone. And similarly, the cops guy said a thing that I've heard as a tweet before, and it sucks that it remains true. But he was like, well, I don't know, man. And I like that he got it out of him organically. How come if a guy steals $750, we tackle him and break down his door and shit, but if you steal $75 million, they just come in, you know, businessmen come in a suit to talk to you. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. How come? And he's not going to solve that. But man,
again,
that's so fucking true.
up.
And you see, it's funny to see someone come to it on film and go,
well,
yeah, I guess we should punish white collar criminals. It's like, I guess we fucking should.
It is a satisfying moment and frustrating at the same time.
Well, because he's like, that wouldn't be a good TV show.
Wouldn't be a good TV show.
Make him take his shirt off.
And again, that's bumping up against capitalism. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, plus, if you're a white collar criminal, you got to take your shirt off. You'll dirty that collar, baby.
You'll dirty. It's so easy to get. You can't get a stain out of a white collar.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe that fucking Lockheed Martin's so evil that because
they're like, we're in the game of welfare.
They're already like, we make weapons, right? Then they were like, no, we're just a general wealth building company, which gave them all the means to do all kinds of fucked up shit. The one they talk about in the Bowling for Columbine that I can't believe, it's just so ballsy and transparent, is that they went into the process of privatizing welfare, which they claim helps poor people. But of course, you're a money-hungry giant corporation. You would only be doing this if you make money. So therefore, by definition, you're squeezing money out of the poorest people in the country. And you're like, so what is your deal? What are you as a company? Well, we make nuclear weapons and rockets and jets and shit, and we steal from poor people. It's like, you truly have no shame. You are scum. Like, your business model is to be scum.
You might be demons.
It's crazy.
You might Wolfram and Hart, dude.
And my mother-in-law, who I know won't listen to this, gets so excited and calls it like, my Lockheed stock got another dividend. And I'm like, yeah, that's because Israel's invading Gaza. And they're like, well, I'm
Lockheed
not part
stock.
of it. I don't know why. I just get the letter that says I have more money now.
Did she
That's
buy
good.
That's
that?
the dream of America.
That's the dream. Yeah.
This is
You
us
are
making money.
winning this game. This
You get
game
little
of
pennies.
But yeah, I did like
Pennies at the
Cops
bottom of
Guy.
the pyramid.
Other standout segments. I thought it was pretty weird how they could only get Trey, not Matt, of the South Park guys. And then he did a South Park cartoon like he was trying to impress the South
he's
Park
aping
guys.
it, right. And apparently they were super pissed about that because Trey Parker and
It
Matt
seemed like a
Stone,
bad
they were
ripoff.
like, you're ripping us off of our style.
Yeah.
So that was why they later in Team America World Police decided to just like,
blow
fuck you,
him
Michael
up.
Moore.
Right, he's a piece of shit in that.
He's a piece
I mean,
of shit.
but that's
So
another. It's just it kind of delegitimizes the movie, kind of. Except that I agree with a lot of this movie. Right? It's so frustrating.
We just go back and forth and back and forth. But yes, the cartoon is part that makes you roll your eyes and go, this won an Academy Award.
Yeah.
It's like a
they're
Schoolhouse Rock parody of some bullshit.
That one felt really meandering because then it was like slavery and the Pilgrims.
Yes.
And they're like, America's built on genocide.
and
You're like,
where-
I know.
all right, yeah.
What? The Columbine
Where are you
kids.
going? This goes to-
They are in an
It's-
abstract sense part of that flow, but you're way off course. You're just way off course.
And now you're talking about the Middle East. Like,
It's
where are you, man? Like,
also-
what part of history?
I know that we're, especially at that time, this isn't the target audience is
No,
different
as we
than the
said,
one now. But
to me, the most notable thing that I grieve the most is how obvious everyone in the movie wants this to be a crazy anomaly and thinks that this movie will be a time capsule of this crazy thing that happened. That's honestly the most heartbreaking aspect.
Right.
I already expressed that I appreciate the way that Michael Moore humanizes those that disagree with us. He also makes fun of them, but he genuinely has conversations and is approachable to people, and I think that's good. You would think that you'd want those same people to watch this movie and to learn something from it, but when you wildly throw everything the whole kitchen sink at it and have things that are blatantly making people roll their eyes, you're just going to lose your audience. It just undercuts the whole thing. I'll stop.
When he asked the cops, why aren't you
I agree.
arresting the polluters? I can't see the Hollywood sign from here.
Right.
Just like,
And you're like, shut up,
Stop.
dude.
It's like
You're embarrassing
You gotta-
me.
that you're
You gotta
embarrassing
calm
yourself.
down, man.
And the people, I'm on your side and I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
speaking
embarrassing.
of which, Marilyn Manson in this,
Yeah.
when he says, what would you say to Marilyn Manson? Michael Moore says, what would you say to the Columbine kids if you could talk to them? And Marilyn Manson says, nothing. I just sit and listen to what they had to say. Is that wise? I can't tell if that's good or bad advice. I don't know. It sounds wise, but I suspect it's stupid, but I can't. I'm honestly flummoxed.
I mean,
what are we doing here? Like,
are the
what's
Columbine
the goal?
kids going to have good stuff to say that's going to help the situation? I don't know that that's true.
I mean, I feel like what he's trying to say is like, where did it go
No
wrong?
one helped
But I
them,
don't
right.
think that those kids would say, like, talk about that. They would be more of like, here is the thing that I want everyone to understand.
Right.
My little
because
manifesto.
So he's just kind of making a statement out of things that he knows nothing about. He doesn't know what the reality of that situation would be. It's a silly
bit
thing
of a
to say.
therapy. That's just felt so fake and posture, like.
Well, that's like a
what I would
general
do is
talk
I'd
therapy
listen to-
technique is
talk
listen,
therapy.
right?
I'm going to listen because I'm the person that represents the people that never get heard.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It makes me
What?
look really
what?
good.
I'm trying to Google really quickly. Marilyn Manson.
He was canceled for some other thing as well that was very shady.
He's like
if I recall.
an abuser of
Yeah, he's
women.
There you go.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
what
He's
I
an abuser of women.
understand, come at me in my ats. Tell me how I'm
No,
wrong.
I
about
think
that.
you're
No,
right.
not you.
That
I don't
resonates
have
with
any.
my
I wouldn't.
Evan
I'd
Rachel
actually
would.
ask that you don't come at Katy.
Yeah,
for
don't come at
this.
me. I
A
just-
very
I abstain. I
well-known
abstain.
fact.
Please don't come at me. That's all that
No,
matters.
I don't actually want to. I'm just positive lots of people listening know the actual charges, and I don't
Right.
care enough to look into it right now. What I know is that Marilyn Manson has done some terrible things,
Terrible shit. Yep.
and
Even the
there is just something about that man saying, "I would listen." Bullshit.
I would listen. Yeah. It had very much the idea of if I had been on that plane, things would have gone down differently.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of the movie, I forgot that the reason it's called Bowling for Columbine is he tries to make the straw man argument that, well, if we're going to blame violent music in video games, why don't we blame bowling? They went bowling the day they committed the massacre. And it's like, that is like a subsidiary joke in your fourth point of the movie. Does that make sense? Like,
Right.
it's so
Yeah.
weird that it's titled that. Because that
Really
was just a
is.
tiny point in a tiny point. And then did you guys notice the last shot of this movie? It's a documentary, right? That won the Academy Award. The last shot of the movie is the guy who wrote it making a strike in bowling, like rolling a strike.
Yeah, he's
Amazing,
like,
dude.
Amazing filmmaking.
I nailed this one.
Also-
It's like the end of Inglourious Bastards or
I was
some
just
shit.
gonna say it's
Oh,
Tarantino saying that this is his masterpiece.
The apparently only that was the whole the thing. They went bowling that morning before going and shooting up the
Yeah.
school. Apparently only one of them went bowling.
Oh really?
Well, then the whole movie is null and void. I don't care about gun control now.
It's just was like such a stretch to
So
make
It's
it.
yeah.
can I ask about, this is not covered in the movie because I think it's become complexified as we've advanced in time, but you can feel free to say I don't have a fully formed opinion if you don't want people to come at you, because I don't think I have a fully formed opinion. But
Yeah.
so for example, I know Robert Evans can elucidate the pro-gun ownership reasons and why the government will boss you around. And I'm not saying it won't, so like, I don't know where I land on that. And I don't know where I land on the fact that he points out in the movie, Windsor, Canada, they have tons of guns because everybody hunts. They have just as many guns per capita, but they don't shoot each other. And his argument is they don't have the fear economy. So I don't know. Maybe he's right. But what I'm really asking is something else he barely touches on, but that I've heard a lot more lately is, just like everything, the black population has tremendously reduced access to gun ownership, or has historically. We've tried to keep guns away, and the guns can be, if guns are a tool for freedom in any context, then surely black Americans need access to them as well, right? If the government's going to oppress anyone, we know that they're doing it currently to marginalized groups. So if anyone should get access to guns because it's right and because it helps you protect yourself from the government, then marginalized groups need access to guns. Yeah, where do you guys land on that? Should there be no guns? Should there be some guns? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think those are two different questions.
They are.
Because
I tricked you.
You're a tricksy hobbit. Because in the first instance, they're not in the business of taking down the government. The gun lobby likes that image. Like, that's the whole thrust of what Charlton Heston is. Over my dead
Freedom fighters,
or out of my dead hands, or whatever the hell he says. It's like the whole idea is that they're trying to advertise from freedom, but they don't have any incentive to actually do that thing. Like, they don't want people to form
Revolt.
militias, right? So,
Well, certain people, yeah.
I mean, I think that
Yeah.
to me is definitely the truth of the first situation. As for whether should be guns, I mean, to me, obviously, this movie makes its point. The statistics make their point. Something is terribly wrong. I think that we need to take a break from guns. I do believe that one of the worst things that we can create in this world is governments. I think they're worse than corporations. They've done historically more damage and tragedy and trauma to human civilization than anything else. So yeah, we need checks and balances there. I don't think that that's necessarily what we have, as much as I think a lot of the people on the other side want us to believe.
Yeah.
That's the situation
That's interesting.
that we're in.
I'm pretty scared of corporate rule as well. I do
I am
feel like
too.
late
Which
stage
is, I think,
capitalism
we
is
have-
for
killing
sure.
us.
I think we
I mean,
are.
like the Nestle guy trying to buy water and stuff.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
some heinous acts on
Oligarchy.
corporations.
Oh, there's
for
so
sure.
much
Yeah.
more than we even
But-
know. That's how I think we are in a corporate oligarchy.
But it's
at the
nothing
moment.
like
But-
it's nothing like governments, right?
Yeah.
Governments they do wars. They do wars out in the open.
yeah.
Corporate.
Oh, and I'm
corporate-
saying corporations, I
America.
believe, have
then-
legitimately become reasons that countries go to war.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah,
they're
like-
almost
like-
governments and corporations are blending together.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah,
This is our
multinational
future.
corporations.
To some right.
Yeah, that's the whole. But I mean,
Go
that's
for
also
it.
going to
have
happen as we globalize. So
Yeah.
like, I don't know. It's the Ouroboros is what I see.
this is such a
Well, this is-
complicated thing.
Right. I mean, obviously, if
I-
someone could solve it, we'd be doing what they said. But it's fascinating. I don't want to be for my whole life. This is why I don't cover this beat that often of politics. I find it so demoralizing that we're still in that place. Like, there's a two-shot of Marilyn Manson with his boot up on Michael Moore's chair going like, this is what I would do to stop Columbine, man.
Yeah,
the
man.
government does this, man. It's fear, man. And they think I'm fear, but they're fear, man. And Michael Moore just like nodding. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're
Yeah,
just
baby.
agreeing that America is so uniquely broken and fucked.
Yeah.
And I feel like we all agree. Is there anything that can be done about that? Or do we all just agree that it's fucked?
I want to answer this question from a bit back ago, the two-part thing about guns. And if so, shouldn't we be giving guns to marginalized communities and stuff? I mean, I think that's something that gets glossed over a lot when talking about gun violence, is the rate of gun violence within minority communities, specifically, Black and brown communities.
That's why it's double
And
complex.
it's, I mean, what is the Black Americans are 10 times more likely than white Americans to die from gun homicide. And it's not about the fact that they're Black. There's just a lot of history to unpack, surrounding communities and how we have created communities and gangs and poverty and, how people escape from those systems. And there's so much to unpack about that. And nobody ever wants to touch that,
So, to me, it seems instinctually, but I just fear violence, and sometimes to a fault, because I've come to understand that it's a form of privilege to think that you can navigate every situation
Right.
without violence. If you're oppressed enough, then violence may be the recourse. But my instinct, I asked the question, but I'll just reveal my own cards.
Yeah.
My instinctive stance is that fewer guns is better. And so I would like to see marginalized communities have even fewer guns. But my point is, if more guns is better because it equals more freedom, then you should want marginalized groups to have even more guns.
right.
But basically, Katie and I feel like we're saying the same thing, which is that it's so fucking complex.
Yeah, but
and it
to
depends
answer
whether you
the-
think guns are good or bad.
I don't like guns. I will never own a gun. Since moving to the mountains, I have shotguns twice, and with people that are very responsible gun owners and take that very seriously. And I've been doing my best to learn about them. I feel very complicated about it. I will never have one in my house, ever. But I don't think we can legislate our way out of this. I don't actually think we're making the problem any better. There might be, if it was a different landscape right now, I don't have the answers, but I'm saying what I touched on this earlier. California can do what it wants. You can go get it from somewhere else. There are loopholes at every state's gun show that you can manipulate. There are new things coming out. Okay, AR-15s banned. Well, what about a Mini 12? It's the same thing, just different types of an attachment. I'm not positive if I'm quoting the right
and
gun
but
models.
you're saying as long as the appetite is there, people will find a way. So the question is, why is the appetite there?
Why is the appetite? That's why I keep coming back to gun violence is going to be a part of America. I'm not saying I'm giving up. I'm saying it is the reality, and I don't see how it's not going to. But why are people hateful to each other? Why do people want to kill each other? Why are people so desperate? Some of these mass shootings aren't just at schools now. This guy was shunned by, I mean, when we were younger, my first experiences with mass shootings were the disgruntled man going out and murdering every woman he could see in a mass shooting,
or the mailman who snaps, right?
The mailman who snaps. Last year in the Bay Area, in Half Moon Bay, near where I grew up, a migrant worker. I'm not sure. I never saw the fall. Living in terrible conditions. Opened up. I'm saying that we're all arguing about gun laws, which, you know what? If I could wave a magic wand, what technology we have access to, what we've done in this industry. I mean, guns are the foundation of our industrial revolution. It's so baked in from the very beginning here. It's a part of our economy.
It's hard to invent cars without inventing guns.
It's hard because they work the same, but also creating, multiple automatic firing, like automation. It all is tied into it. And that's not me arguing in favor of it. I'm saying we're so far fucking past it that I'm saying we need to be, it's not just the take away this weapon. It's why are we so fucking lost? And I don't have a positive answer, but it's just bigger than what anybody talks about,
It's gun violence of all our problems is like a symptom problem or a downstream problem, as urgent and horrifying as it is. And I don't think either of us, of course, are suggesting that you shouldn't try to address symptoms. But there are problems we face that are symptoms of other problems, and then problems that are upstream of those. There are the disparity in income equality and outcome equality and desperation. These are the things that lead to violence, and then the guns are just available. So through that lens, it becomes gun violence.
Right.
So it's
there's just so much. There's just so much, and anybody pretending that guns are a big part of the gun violence problem. You are correct. Everyone is correct. I do agree with that. It's just okay. And
I know the argument of you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I always am of two minds about that, because on the one hand, I understand you're saying if people want guns, then there will be guns, but all things do change and all things end sometime. For example, there used to be a demand for phrenology tools, which is measuring the bumps on your head to determine your character. Then we stopped using them because we found out it wasn't a useful tool. It wasn't doing anything that we liked. I feel like guns are also like that now, right? We can choose to have as much or as little of a tool as we need, as we think is useful. And then I think it also speaks to, like you said, the fear people have of government. That is a legitimate fear.
It is a legitimate fear.
The idea that you having an AK will keep the government from fucking us is silly to me.
I know that
it's like a safety blanket almost.
Up here, I agree with you. I said a similar point, but I know that people up here would say, at first, but let's look at the United States war on terror. And different types. There's an element of still personal safety. Fine, I'll take to the hills. Fine, I'll do this. If everything really push comes to shove, a lot of people want that. They want that opportunity to act out that fantasy. So they're going to be dug in about it. But, this isn't me defending it. Sometimes when I say these things, it makes it sound like that's what I want, and I don't.
No, you're giving it nuance, I think.
Be a reality to how people think about this topic. And as things do get more desperate, you were right, Michael. If we are to say guns keep us safer, then why wouldn't you want minority groups to have access to it? It's a good point. It's
Well, unfortunately, I think the truth is so I'm basing that on the logic of, well, so are guns good or are guns bad? And then I think the truthful, not disingenuous answer to that is, like any tool, they're good in some situations, bad in other situations, depends on how it's being used. Okay. Then who decides what situations, and the unfortunate reality of the universe is some things are so complex that they're very difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
And
I
a podcaster who doesn't like talking politics normally, don't have the solution to that. I don't know. But there are things that are too complex to simply navigate. And then we try as a species to create these one size fits all, or like 3 size fits all, where we're like, well, abortion's for some, miniature American flags for others. And we're always just trying to get that balance right. And I don't know that we ever will. And now I'm sad, so I can be done whenever you guys are done.
It's hard. It's so hard. It's such a frustrating. There are some ugly things going on in the world at the moment, all the time.
It's
but
true.
At the moment, and I was
especially right now. It's a dark time for humanity right now.
Dark time for humanity, and I'm trying hard not to bring up parallels to other countries and conflicts right now that will make this darker. But, violence abounds.
Yeah,
violence abounds.
I used to say violence is never the answer because that's easy to say. Now I don't even know if that's true.
It's hard because you touched on this briefly. It's like, when is it justified to protect yourself, to fight back? We can see clear examples time and time again, not just all around the world of
Statues
the thing we
crumble
take for
me.
The things we take for granted happening to people all the time, everywhere, and we lose sight of the perspective that America is behind a lot of that. So what makes you think that America couldn't turn that on us too?
And we're Americans after all, so we're gonna be like, well, one of the coolest things that happened to democracy is that we fought some British people. We were birthed from blood. So violence was the answer in some cases, right?
Well, and when you're talking about fundamental revolution, like how do we get out of a corporate oligarchy? And I do believe that will happen. I do believe everything ends someday. Yeah. Someday America will end, which is interesting to think about. Like the idea of a conceptualized America will end. Everything has to end. But probably violence will be involved, right?
It almost certainly will.
Man.
It almost certainly will.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't think, here's how we solve it. No more guns. We all study the art of the blade.
The great outdoor fight, if you're familiar.
Art of the blade. There's some old timers up here.
Done.
There's some old timers up here, and on my walk in the morning 2 days a week, there will be these old guys practicing fencing in the little park.
Oh, that's cute.
But with sticks.
Oh.
So cute.
Wow.
That's
could
pretty
be
cute.
us all.
Some John Wick 4 shit.
It feels like children playing,
Yeah, but they're old.
That I do like that aspect about the first 20 minutes about it of Bowling for Columbine is America's love affair with guns. And I do love that it starts with like this 1950s, the history of advertisement, where it was like, just shows you an ad where it's like, it really sounds like a gun. In fact, let's cut to 2 cops saying like it's
a real
feels
gun.
like the real thing. Yeah, it's just like,
and going
that's
like,
what we thought was
criminals
great.
in the head is what I think my son should do. Ads from the 50s where you're like, they were so out of touch. Oh my God.
Yeah, and it's just as the world turns, man, it's just crazy to be like, we know we never get it right. Hindsight will always tell us that we are fools. But the thing we do know about reality we can bank on is that that ain't it. We're gonna get better, hopefully. We are not gonna do that thing anymore.
Right. But something we're doing now that we think is normal, future people will go, that is the foolishest thing that we can imagine that you believe.
That is a silly thing. You are silly people.
That is definitely
and in fact,
something
you're
we
gross
can bank
to
on.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Probably vegetarianism, I believe. I believe someday, especially because they'll have lab-grown meat, if that, and they'll be like, you ate dead animals that you killed.
Okay.
That's gross. Yeah.
We talked about
like,
that recently when you were here.
We'll see. All right. Well, then,
what do we evolve?
if we're on trod ground,
Well, no, I don't-
speaking of children
yeah.
playing. No, Katie, shut up. I got to get out of here.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you, Jeff, for giving us such a mighty nugget to chew on, I guess I'll say, because of course you could talk about these topics, because these are the topics that actually matter to people's lives for hours and hours and hours, but we'll call it there. That was our Bowling for Columbine episode.
All behold
Jeff.
nuggets.
If you want us to talk more like this, you could pick a similar movie, but regardless, next episode we'll probably be back to just arguing about pop culture and stuff that doesn't directly matter, but just is a little more fun. Well, we covered Waltz with Bashir. That one got pretty real too. So who knows? Who knows what we'll do? Maybe you can decide if you sponsor us at the Pick the Flick tier over at patreon.com/smallbeans. And Katie, where can they follow you, find you, and see what you're up to lately?
Oh boy. Okay, here I go.
Do your thing.
I have a show with Cody Johnston on YouTube called Some More News, where we do deep dives into topics that are hard, but we try to have fun with it. We also have a podcast called Even More News, and that's, a weekly conversational situation where we talk about the week's news. And we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/somewherenews. You can follow me on Twitter. Just don't like it there very much. And then on Instagram, I try to post pictures and things of my dog.
We have a TikTok show now, but no one seems to know. So that's something. Small Beans Comedy
We're
on
just
TikTok.
trying stuff.
We're trying stuff.
I gotta download TikTok. We keep trying to do TikTok, and I hate it. It's important. Adapt or die. That's correct.
Yeah,
AOD.
you just try stuff. If you don't try stuff, what are you doing? You're doing nothing. You're not trying stuff. So
You might
that's
just
the
be living
wisdom
your life
we have
in
found.
Ultimately, that's what we learned today. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.